also provides the knowledge and practical hands-on skills for rescued and stranded animals. In closing, the Blue World Project is a groundbreaking new venture that will enhance the welfare of SeaWorld's orcas and dramatically enhance guest experiences of these incredible animals, so guests leave inspired to help conserve these animals in the wild at a critical time. I appreciate your attention today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the CCC. I shall be brief. My name is Carolyn Hennessy. I am a working actress, a best-selling author, and host of my own radio podcast, Animal Magnetism, focusing on real-world problems and rational solutions. I am also not paid to be here. There is a common perception about actors in showbiz that we may tend to speak before we think, or learn, or know. Regarding animals, it's for fear of being labeled cruel, abusive, and uncaring by radical activists. I have taken great pains to learn and understand the facts, the stats, who wants what and why, and what is ultimately in the best interest of the animals in question, because what is in their best interest is also in ours. I have explored all of SeaWorld, watching humans and animals experience bonding, enrichment, and education. SeaWorld is the very opposite of cruel and inhumane. It is, in fact, a national treasure. The request to approve SeaWorld's massive Blue World expansion ought to be met with a resounding yes for all who want the best for these few animals thriving in San Diego. Yet, animal rights groups are determined to deny improvements that will enhance the lives of animals you, your children, and your grandchildren have come to know and love. Blue World will nearly double the size of the current orca habitat and includes a fast swim underwater current for both exercise and enrichment. This alone is of tremendous benefit to the health and well-being of the animals, as trainers will expand and enhance their world-class training and enrichment programs. A seminal point. The critics know that the MMPA prohibits releasing cetaceans born into human care, as most SeaWorld killer whales are, back into the ocean. The call to set them free is pure nonsense, and nonsense is the more diplomatic word. So why do they oppose bigger habitats for animals that will, by federal law and common sense, always live in human care? PETA, the largest of these animal activist groups, values its own agenda, which includes, as a video with Ingrid Visser shows, starting its own amusement park using sea pens and purloined orcas from SeaWorld, values it much more than it does improving the lives of animals. Not surprising, given the thousands of adoptable animals this organization kills each year at its so-called shelter, according to Virginia state records. And these are the people who want to tell you what to do with these whales. Most of what we know about killer whales comes from the research done by SeaWorld over the past 5 decades. The interconnected pools of Blue World reaffirm SeaWorld's commitment to continue to study and protect orcas in the wild as well. Blue World is supported by numerous animal welfare, veterinary, zoological, and academic experts. In closing, I ask that you vote with the recommendations of your own staff to ensure the zoo's ongoing dedication to the well-being of its orca population. To do otherwise would do immense harm to much-needed cetacean research, public education, and conservation efforts. Blue World will enhance the lives of SeaWorld's killer whales, expand the experience for park guests and students, provide much-needed jobs to the citizens of Southern California, and provide even greater opportunities for important scientific research. A final thought. If you would like to know how successful was the story of Keiko, I invite you to read Killing Keiko by Mark Simmons. The truth is an entirely different and horrifying story. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Deborah Luke, and I am the Senior Vice President for Conservation and Science with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, often referred to as the AZA. I earned my doctorate degree in cognitive neuroscience and have over 20 years of animal research and conservation experience, including with marine mammals, in both wild and zoological settings. AZA is a nonprofit organization whose independent accreditation commission oversees the world's toughest and most comprehensive standards and review processes for accrediting aquariums and zoos. SeaWorld San Diego is a member of AZA in good standing that meets and exceeds AZA's accreditation standards. Within the scientific community, we know that we learn the most about a species when we study animals both in the wild and in human care. By studying animals in the wild, we are able to gain information about long-term observable patterns of behavior, ecology, and ethology for a species or a population. By studying animals in our care, we are able to gain more detailed knowledge about how their physiology allows them to thrive and how they perceive their environment. These two areas of study are complementary, and when considered together, offer an unparalleled scientific knowledge with substantial implications for conservation of animals in the wild. AZA-accredited aquariums and zoos are devoting a constantly increasing amount of time, effort, and resources to conservation and the protection of threatened and endangered species, including marine mammals. They devote equal energy towards always improving standards of care and protection of the animals in their care. SeaWorld San Diego, like all AZA-accredited zoos and aquariums, dedicates itself to caring for all animals, including orcas, in everyday life.
Thank you for your comments. We'll now go to Mr. Palmer from the Earth Island International Marine Project. You have 10 minutes.
Close. Mr. Chairman, before the actresses here devolve down into a catfight, I'd like to talk a little bit about something. My money, by the way, is on Pamela.
Is your name Mr.
Excuse me, sir, yes. Mark Palmer. I'm Associate Director of the International Marine Mammal Project of Earth Island Institute.
Okay, thank you.
Where to begin? We have a lot of discussion about the saving of endangered species. There is only one orca species, subspecies actually, that is endangered. This is the Pacific Northwest population of orcas that is found off the Puget Sound area of the United States. The reason why it is endangered is because it had been seriously depleted by SeaWorld and various other people. We have a corky banner here coming up. The only reason why this species is endangered is because of the collection of animals back in the 1970s and 80s, which depleted the population. Therefore, the animals have not been able to grow. We have a number of pollution problems as well, which SeaWorld is not dealing with. We have a number of other problems within Puget Sound, ship strikes, noise pollution, etc., which SeaWorld does not deal with or does not even mention in their presentations. So I don't think that they're doing much for conservation. I don't think they're doing anything at all. And I can make an argument that they are doing a great deal of damage to the people of the state of California through their miseducation of the public, their misstatements about what's going on. They talk about Corky, and here we have the Free Corky banner. Corky was captured in the Pacific Northwest. It is one of the only animals, I guess there are two animals at SeaWorld San Diego that was caught in the wild. We do have a possibility of returning Corky back to the wild because we know where Corky's brothers and sisters are. They've been watched and they've been studied for a number of years by biologists up in the area. So Corky is a possibility indeed for returning a wild orca back to its home where it was once ripped off from. Remember, when you take an orca out of the environment, you are taking it away and put it into captivity. You are taking it away from the two most important things in that animal's life. Its environment and the freedom of the seas and the whole aspect of the environment which has molded that animal into the animal that it is. You remove that from them. Even the orcas that are born in captivity, they are not meant for captivity. They are not supposed to be there. Unfortunately, as the people said earlier, we can't release those animals. They will have to be in public and private ownership for the rest of their lives because they can't be released. However, I will note that under the Constitution of the state of California, this is something that the California Coastal Commission should take very close to your heart. Under the Constitution of the state of California, wildlife belongs to the people. Those orcas do not belong to SeaWorld. The only reason SeaWorld has them is they have a permit for them, for their ownership, for their care, but they belong to the people if they belong to anyone. I would also point out, you've heard some of the put downs from the SeaWorld people coming in to this. This is typical of SeaWorld. They call us extremists, they call us, and various other names that you've heard today, including from the nice actress. It seems to me that we should take that into consideration as the commission. Can you trust SeaWorld? And I would tell you that you cannot. They call us extremists, and you have a letter before you from a number of scientists, including the terrible extremists, Dr. Lori Marino, Dr. Jane Goodall, Jean-Michel Cousteau. They could not be here today. The reason is, no doubt, that they're out doing something extreme. We are not extremists. We are organizations that are very deeply concerned about these issues. We've been working on these issues for years and years and years. We provided you with a copy of Blackfish. Each of you was sent one from Earth Island Institute. Blackfish is not an animal extremist documentary. Those were former SeaWorld employees who spoke into it. Now, if SeaWorld has a problem with them, they ought to look at their own employment policies rather than claiming that they're animal rights extremists or some other sort of derogatory language that we've heard today. We are not extremists. We're looking for a way to resolve this issue. The solution indeed is not to release these animals back into the wild. Most of them cannot be released back into the wild. We do think that a sea pen operation, which is a natural enclosure, not an artificial expansion of the concrete tanks, the expansion of the prison is still a prison. What we want to see is sea pens out in the ocean where these animals can thrive, where they can feel the tides, where they can feel the winds, where they can chase fish, where they can do things that orcas do, instead of doing a show each and every day on the hour, which is what they do now in captivity. These animals are not free. They are working for their food. They will not do their tricks if they're not hungry. So therefore, they have to be kept hungry in order to be fed. Yes, they get the food at the end of the day, but if they weren't hungry, they would not do the tricks that you see before you in SeaWorld. I would also mention the litigation that's ongoing that is going to test some of these issues. We are working with the law firm of Covington and Burling in San Francisco, Earth Island Institute in Anderson versus SeaWorld, which is in Northern California court, which challenges these very claims that SeaWorld has been making as a violation of unfair business practices and violations of consumer protection laws. That litigation is ongoing, as I say, and we're hopeful that we will get it. We're not asking for a big chunk of money from SeaWorld. What we're asking for is a court order against them making these statements, these false statements that they've been making, and indeed making the truth available to the public about their orcas in captivity. And that's what we want to get out of it. You can be a part of this effort to phase out the captivity of orcas in the wild, in captivity, in the state of California. We're working with the state legislature. We've got the courts involved. Here, the California Coastal Commission has a chance to make a stand on this issue. You can deny the permit, which the nice actress would like you to do, or we could condition the permit on ending the breeding in captivity of orcas in the state of California. And you'll hear more about that proposal from Sarah Wan when she gets up to speak with you. One more mention on the Corky banner, thanks to the volunteers who have put it up. If we could run it around so everybody else in the room could see it, and it looks like I've beaten the clock, so I'll say thank you very much for your time, and I hope you do the right thing.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite up Dr. Naomi Rose from the Animal Welfare Institute and those who will be speaking with her.
Hello. I have a presentation. Thank you very much for inviting all of us to speak with you today on this important issue. And I'm here to ask you, on behalf of the Animal Welfare Institute, to vote no on this proposal. And I know that this might seem a strange thing for an animal welfare advocate to propose that we don't give these whales more space. Well, the reason I'm asking you to vote no, is because giving them incrementally more space is ill-advised at this time. There's a number of reasons. I've written a letter to you on this topic about the waste of resources this might prove to be. If you put $100 million into this big hole in the ground at this point, events are starting to move forward on several different levels, including in the legislature here in California. And there's a drought going on, and public opinion is changing. And quite frankly, it might be best, at the very least, to reconsider the timing of this, to at least wait, until certain events play out and we see where things stand in 2 or 3 years. Building this enclosure now and SeaWorld investing this kind of money, and the city of San Diego and the state investing this kind of money into this enclosure just seems bad timing to me. And I think it will be, in the end, events will overtake this decision here today, and it will be a waste of resources if you vote yes on this. I have the ability to move on. Yes. So there are 58 orcas on display in 8 countries in the world. Most of them are here in the United States, but there are some all over the world. There's some in Asia. There's some in Russia. There's some in Europe. So in Russia, there's a capture operation going on right now. They've taken. I found it very interesting that SeaWorld said that they don't know anything about those captures in Russia. I know a lot about those captures in Russia. It's not actually really hard as an advocate for conservation to know about those captures in Russia. They should know more about those captures in Russia. They are providing orcas for the public display industry, which they are a member of. I'm rather surprised to hear that they don't know very much about it. There have been 15 captures in the last, since 2012, so that's the last 3 years. 2 were just this year. And 10 of those were before the date on the condition for this permit. So even though I've heard today that they are pledging additionally not to take those animals or their offspring or genetic material from those animals, it isn't clear to me that they are talking about the 10 before February 12, 2014, or just the 5 after February 12, 2014. So I do think that those Russian orcas are relevant to the discussion here. When it comes to their welfare, I'm going to just run really quickly through some free-ranging versus captive animal differences. This is something I've spent a lot of time discussing in my job. I have been addressing the issue of the public display and the welfare of captive marine mammals, including orcas, since 1993. So for 22 years, I've been working on this issue. I am an orca biologist. I studied them in the Pacific Northwest. I'm most familiar with the northern residents, which are threatened under Canadian law, but I'm also familiar with the southern residents, which are endangered under U.S. law. So in terms of space, you've seen this slide already, so I won't spend too much time on it. As Dr. Visser pointed out, this is one short period of a day, what one orca did. He dove to 600 feet, and he moved a great deal of horizontal distance, and that little blue box in the upper corner is what the whales at SeaWorld have to move around in. And so no matter what they do in terms of building larger concrete enclosures, they cannot give the animals what they need. This is a species that is very high on the list of species that don't belong in captivity. There are some species that are too large, too socially complex, too intelligent to thrive in captivity, and orcas top that list. Elephants are also on that list. Polar bears are on that list because they're so wide-ranging. They simply do not thrive in captivity. We're not talking about all zoos and aquariums. I've heard that also today, that we're somehow or other radically trying to close down all zoos and aquariums. That's not the case. We're talking about a specific species that does not thrive in captivity. And I think this slide is really indicative of why. There are a lot of researchers who work with orcas in the wild who are opposed to their public display, who support the legislation by Assemblyman Bloom, for example. They wrote a letter supporting it because of this very simple math. Large animal, small concrete enclosure. Social groupings. Their family bonds are broken. No matter what you have heard about the separation of mothers and calves, they do separate mothers and calves. Depends on how you define a calf. If you're just talking about a dependent calf that's still nursing, sure, they don't break those bonds unless there's some medical need. But once they stop nursing, SeaWorld is free to move these animals around under their own policy. Well, the fact is that in nature, even with the populations that do have some dispersal, a young orca will not leave its mother's side until it's 5 to 10 years old. All right? So there are some populations that show some dispersal, but not until they're 5 to 10 years old. That is the earliest you should be separating any calf from its mother. But in fact, the populations which form the basis, the foundation of the SeaWorld collection, as they call it, are in fact North Atlantics and North Pacific whales. And those whales show long-term family bonds that last for life. So to take a calf that is 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, and move it to a different park is breaking a family bond. Environmental quality and complexity. Well, that's the tank at SeaWorld that's going to be the equivalent of the tank at SeaWorld that's going to be demolished. This is G-Pool in Orlando. It used to have rock features. It used to have landscaping. They took all of that out when the trainer, Don Brancho, was killed in February 2010. They removed those rock features. I actually was foolish enough to believe that those were permanent rock features, but they in fact were just an overlay that they very easily just lifted out and removed. That was so that they could put in the fast rising floor, which is so far luckily not been tested. But in fact, they removed all of the features from this enclosure to put in that fast rising floor. If you look at these architectural designs, which are part of the application, you will notice that most of the features, most of the landscaping is on land. It's for the people. There's not very much marinescaping going on there. This is still just going to be a concrete tank with a lot of glass. It's going to be for the viewing public, not really for the whales. Just one of the examples of why this is so different for them. If you notice in those artist renderings that SeaWorld showed, the visibility in those tanks is wonderful. You can see all the way to the back and all the way to the bottom. It's utterly clear to maximize the visitor's experience. That's not natural. The ocean is turbid. It's got a lot of other features in it that cause visibility to be low. And then, of course, there's just depth where the light drops out. If any of you are divers, you know how fast the light drops out. 30 feet, 40 feet, you're getting into darkness. These animals routinely dive, as you saw in the slide I showed, to 600 feet. They're in pitch black darkness, and they use their echolocation to navigate. This tank is a completely unnatural environment for them, and it's the biggest one they're ever going to build for these animals. One of the reasons we were hoping to encourage the promotion of sea pen, not sea cage, I thought that was pretty funny actually, sea pen sanctuaries, is because it will allow them to live in a more natural environment. It still won't be perfect. It won't be as deep as they should be diving. It won't be as big as they should be, in terms of horizontal distance that they should be swimming, but it'll be bigger than this. And this is as big as they can financially, feasibly make it. All right, but it'll be, if we are able to work together to create sea pen sanctuaries, it will be larger than this. And we are going to have a workshop at the Society for Marine Mammalogy in December this year. I invite all of you to attend. It's open to the public on sea pen sanctuaries. And we will have speakers from a wide variety of disciplines to talk about the logistics, the actual nuts and bolts of what it would mean to have a sea pen sanctuary in operation, whether it's the state of California or Oregon or Washington or Maine for that matter. We don't know where it will be. It will be carefully located so it won't have all of the problems that Dr. Nolan's talked about. I hope he's been talking to the U.S. Navy about these problems because there's a sea cage facility right next to SeaWorld, which they don't seem to have a problem with, but then I'm not sure why they have a problem with the concept that we're proposing. And finally, behavioral restrictions. These are predators, the ocean's top predators. So you've got this is what they should be doing, and I've got a picture in a moment of them herding fish, so don't think I'm trying to say they're all marine mammal hunters. Some of them are fish eaters. But this is what they should be doing, and this is what they do in captivity. Again, what about those teeth, okay, the wearing down of the teeth? It's not from what they eat, okay? It's not how they eat. because their teeth never touch their food. All right, they have fish dropped right down into their gullets. Yes, occasionally they'll pick up a fish that has fallen, into the water, but basically they are not touching the fish with their teeth. This is not how they wear their teeth in a natural sort of way, either through their feeding methods. They wear their teeth from other neurotic behaviors. And one of the reasons I have trouble with SeaWorld isn't because of any cruelty. I don't think they're being cruel to these whales. I think they love these whales. I think they really do, especially the trainers. There's no doubt about it that they feel an extremely strong bond with these animals, but they don't understand them. They think they do. They think they're the world's experts, but they have never spent any time observing these animals in the wild. And if they don't know what normal is, then they cannot know what abnormal is. They cannot recognize abnormal if they don't know what normal is. All right? And you actually, if you talk to some of them, you'll find out they've never even seen a wild whale. Those are the people who are responsible for their welfare, people who've never seen a wild whale. That disturbs me. All right? And so they can't know that, the chewing on the walls and the gates is actually completely abnormal. That is not what they do in the wild. They don't chew on logs or rocks in their environment. They don't do that. All right? Now, this is fish herding in Norway, a very cooperative behavior. They make a big herring ball, and then they cooperatively take turns moving through it and feeding on these animals, feeding on these fish. It's a family affair when they do it. And that's what happens in captivity, right down the gullet. How do they wear their teeth? Not through handling their prey. I would love SeaWorld to do a scientific study on why their whales wear their teeth. There's almost no literature on this, and it's certainly not coming from SeaWorld. SeaWorld has published 50 orca papers in the last 50 years, which is a very low output, incidentally. A 50-year scientific career should produce 200, 300, 400 papers, not 50. But nevertheless, not one of them is about dentition. Not one of them is about why their whales break and wear their teeth. Instead of explaining what's going on in captivity, they tell you it's normal, and so they don't have to study it. But it's not normal. That's normal. That's a stranded resident whale in the Pacific Northwest, so it's dead. That's why it looks so terrible. It is dead, but look at its teeth. Absolutely gorgeous. That's a resident whale eating salmon in the Pacific Northwest. Those are captive whales. Now, there are wild populations of killer whales with worn teeth. Dr. Visser mentioned them. Dr. Nollins mentioned them. There are such populations, but their teeth wear at the population level. All the whales in that particular population have worn teeth. It's because of the way they feed, and we're still trying to figure all of that out. Is it because they are the type of prey they handle? Is it because of the way they're handling the prey? We actually don't know, but it's at the population level. Most populations have those beautiful, gorgeous teeth. So if in some populations they have tooth wear, it's because of the way they're handling their prey or because of their prey. Maybe they're very abrasive. We don't know yet. Why are they like that in captivity? Why are they broken? Why are they worn down to the gums? It's probable that in the wild populations, it's a health problem. It's probably causing problems for those populations that suffer from that tooth wear because of the way they handle their prey. So when SeaWorld tells you there are no health problems to this condition, that's simply not logical. Bad teeth affect human beings. Of course bad teeth are a problem for their health. Why isn't there more literature on this in the zoo biology journal or the veterinary journals out there? So you also heard about survivorship, the paper by Drs. Jett and Ventry and also by Dr. Robeck. Look at the last line there. Survivorship rates in captivity are comparable to populations in the northeastern Pacific Ocean that are endangered and threatened. That's as good as it gets to SeaWorld. SeaWorld's habitat allows their whales to survive just as well as endangered and threatened populations. That's who they're comparing their whales to in that paper. They say that they live as long as they do in the wild. Yes, but those whales in the wild are endangered and threatened. So that's not actually something to shout about. Then finally in conservation, I'm going to wrap up really quickly here because I only have a minute. These are the captures in Russia. All right? As I said, 10 of those were before February 12, 2014. 5 of them have been since. They are in China and Russia. Again, SeaWorld's Dr. Nollins told you he had no idea where these whales were. Well, I know where these whales are. Why doesn't he know where these whales are? He should know. This is something that the public display industry is doing. He should know what his brethren are doing. All right. The fact is that we now know that 8 of them are in China. I am going to be in Beijing later this year to do a press conference to announce a campaign to address the welfare of those whales. It is not a good thing that they're going to China, but that's where they are, and I happen to know that, so I'm just confused as to why SeaWorld does not. All right, if they're a conservation organization, they ought to know where these captive whales are going. And that is all I have to say, and thank you very much again for having us here.
Thank you. Mr. Barry, Christopher Barry will be here for ADLF, and they will have 15 minutes for their presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Carney Ann Nasser. I am Legislative Counsel for the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and I'm just going to take a couple of moments and then pass the baton over to Christopher Barry, a litigation attorney at ALDF, and Sarah Wan, who, as you all, I'm sure, have had the opportunity to talk to, is here on behalf of ALDF and as a former chair of this commission. I just wanted to reiterate our position that this permit should not be granted. But if it is, that the commission is compelled to absolutely mandate the end of the captive breeding program at SeaWorld San Diego. And I would like to add one footnote, just as a mother. I have a 5-year-old and I have an 18-month-old. And I have read the reports by medical doctors who specialize in early childhood development. And they have spoken at length and unequivocally about the fact that there's not only no educational value to taking our children to a facility like SeaWorld or to a circus like Ringling Brothers, it actually sends our message to our kids that other living beings, whether they are animals or humans, are merely here for our amusement. They're here for us to manipulate, control, and use for our own personal whims. And so at that, I would appeal to you as a parent and hand over the rest of our time to Christopher Barry and Sarah Wan. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, Commissioners. My name is Christopher Barry, and I'm a staff attorney at the Animal Legal Defense Fund. I'd like to spend a couple minutes of time just talking about your legal authority to act. And in particular, I'm very concerned about the staff report's refusal to account for the welfare of captive orcas as marine resource impacts under the Coastal Act. The report's refusal to consider captive orca welfare skews the balance of the entire analysis and its recommendation that you approve the permit with the very limited conditions. In particular, Section 30230 of the Public Resources Code requires that marine resources shall be maintained, enhanced, and where feasible, restored. Unquestionably, this extends to animals, and moreover, there is no distinction in the statutory language between captive animals and animals in the wild. In fact, the Coastal Act and other environmental laws are regularly concerned with environmental and other impacts that happen in urban areas. The Commission itself, as the staff report points out, has in fact considered captive marine mammal welfare in the past in conjunction with other permits that it has granted, so there is precedent for the Commission to take that into account. While the best reading of Section 30230 is that it requires impacts on captive wildlife to be considered, at the very least, the staff report points out that the issue is open to interpretation. In other words, as commissioners, you at the very least have the discretion to consider the misery of captive orcas at SeaWorld and the future orcas that it will breed into existence if breeding is not limited by your possible approval of the permit. Now, the Commission not only is authorized to consider captive orca welfare in making its decision, but is uniquely situated to do so in light of the fact that the federal government isn't strongly regulating this, nor is the Fish and Wildlife regulations in the state of California. A couple hours ago, SeaWorld attorney David Watson stood up here and told you unequivocally that the Marine Mammal Protection Act expressly preempts this commission from imposing orca captivity standards. However, comments submitted by SeaWorld to the National Marine Fisheries Service in opposition to some proposed amendments to the Marine Mammal Protection Act in 2007, SeaWorld said, and I'm quoting verbatim here, the 1994 amendments to the Marine Mammal Protection Act unequivocally established that the National Marine Fisheries Service has no role in the care, maintenance, and general oversight of marine mammals once they leave the wild and enter into the United States. SeaWorld also said that NMFS would be overreaching and improperly extending its jurisdiction and authority by regulating orcas and other marine mammals once they are out of the wild. So it seems as though SeaWorld is willing to say whatever it needs to say when it's commercially expedient. Of course, the Animal Welfare Act does provide some minimal baseline standards, but it encourages explicitly state and local governments to go further and to do more, which is exactly what the Commission should do here. And of course, California's fish and wildlife regulations don't extend to orcas, leaving the ball in your court and putting you in a unique and special situation to take the welfare of captive orcas into account. Accordingly, we implore the Commission to consider the inherently inhumane nature of orca captivity in making its decision today. And SeaWorld must not be empowered to build more tanks that allow it to collect or breed more orcas who will fatally suffer and languish in captivity.
My name is Sarah Wan, speaking on behalf of ALDF. The keeping of orcas in captivity for entertainment is cruel and totally unjustified, regardless of what SeaWorld says. It is inconsistent with current thinking and what we now know about what happens to these whales in captivity. I will not repeat what others have said about federal law or the absurdity of considering a tank to be habitat. I will focus on what I know best, the Coastal Act, and your ability to use it. Your staff has stated you cannot apply 30230 to animals in captivity as your standard of review, but frankly, that's false. Not only is the application of 30230 up to interpretation, which staff admits, and the Coastal Act itself states that 3009, that this division shall be liberally construed to accomplish its purposes and objectives. But you have applied it previously, and you cannot simply ignore that fact, particularly since that was the one instance that I am aware of where the issue of impacts to captive marine resources was an issue. And I've been at this, at the Commission, for over 30 years. Once you use 30230, and you did use it and apply it, I was on the Commission when you did, you cannot now say you do not have the right to use it. In fact, your staff goes on to use 30230 by making the claim that Special Condition 1 makes the project consistent with 30230, and relative to noise impacts, that the proposed project is in conformance with the marine resource protection policies of Chapter 3, i.e. 30230. It is completely up to you, the commissioners, to decide what makes the project consistent. If you don't agree with the staff's position about what constitutes consistency, you are free to substitute your judgment as to what does. In this instance, there is no way that Condition 1 makes this project consistent. Condition 1 gives SeaWorld free rein to use the new tank as a breeding tank because there are no marine mammal accredited reproductive guidelines. The only two professional accredited programs for cetacean facilities that exist, and they were here, and they didn't tell you they have those kinds of guidelines that the staff refers to, they don't have any reproductive guidelines specific for orcas. And what this means is that the condition that you have in front of you from your staff does not place any limitations on SeaWorld's ability to breed as many orcas as they wish. Your staff has said that the tank can hold up to 94 whales. So even if SeaWorld should agree to put an upper limit of 20 on it, which they indicated, on the number of whales, the new tank may hold, according to them, what amounts to twice as many orcas as there are, and it doesn't change anything relative to what we've been talking about. It would mean that even with that, that the current whales will not have any additional room. More importantly, whatever number they choose, that would only limit how many whales they could keep at any one time. They would be free to breed and ship and breed again. By the way, putting a cap on the number of whales that what they can breed just proves that the purpose of this tank is for breeding and for the public to view, which is what we've always suspected. It's not to benefit the whales. And contrary to your staff's contention that captive breeding lessens the need to capture orcas from the wild, the opposite is true. As long as breeding is a business that generates income by breeding and selling the orcas, there'll be a need for taking the whales from somewhere to avoid problems with inbreeding. Does the Virgin Pledge take care of that? Frankly, not. Okay, it doesn't deal with breeding at all. And regardless, this commission can put in place a condition that does have a meaningful impact. And that's what I said, okay? Okay, that does have a meaningful impact while still allowing SeaWorld to continue exhibiting those whales already in their possession. The condition we asked for will result in the gradual phasing out of the use of orcas and actually providing more room to the existing orcas. By prohibiting breeding, that's what you do. We ask that SeaWorld only be permitted to hold or display the currently existing whales in its park. I won't go through their names. And that SeaWorld be prohibited from the captive breeding of orcas, either through mating or artificial insemination, including the collection of gametes. This is what would make the project consistent with 30230, and it is the only way that the new tank will ever give the orcas any more room. If SeaWorld says no to this, then it really does show their real intent. This condition would also send a statement that the Commission is in agreement with the current view that using these whales for entertainment purposes is not acceptable. The state of South Carolina has banned it. The nation of Canada has banned it. Assemblyman Bloom's bill is seeking to have California join South Carolina in banning this. And the nation of India has declared orcas to be non-human persons. How can this commission in good conscience turn its back on them? You have heard about how these beautiful, intelligent beings literally live their captive lives being tortured. You have the opportunity to be on the right side of history. I urge you not to turn away from your responsibility to give them the protections that legally can be provided to them, and you can give it to them legally. Unless this condition is substituted in its entirety for the current condition 1, there will be no additional room for the existing orcas, and then the project should be denied. Thank you. And I'm going to hand this out. This is our substitute motion that we'd like you to substitute for condition 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Jennifer Fearing to come forward from the Humane Society. You'll have 3 minutes, and that would be followed by Scott Andrews from Save Everyone's Access.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Kinsey and Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Fearing, and I'm here today on behalf of the Humane Society of the United States, the nation's largest animal protection organization. I flew down this morning from Sacramento, where just 4 days ago, Governor Brown signed Speaker Atkins' landmark legislation cracking down on the pernicious trade in elephant ivory and rhino horn. In recent years, California legislators and regulators have, among numerous new legal protections for animals, seen fit to stop the cruel and wasteful trade in shark fins, phase out toxic lead ammunition when shooting wildlife, restrict the use of super poisonous rodenticides, and end commercial bobcat trapping. There can be no doubt, as a consequence, that Californians care deeply about the plight and conservation of wild animals here and elsewhere, stopping needless suffering and improving welfare, and we look to our policymakers to curb business activities which violate these values. You have an opportunity to be part of this legacy today because progress is not accomplished by legislation alone. As regulators, you play a vital role in advancing the goals of the policies you are entrusted to implement. And as Commissioner Bochco said just last night when discussing the Newport Banning Ranch project, the Coastal Act is a very broad act. It invites interpretation in many areas. The plight of captive orcas is your business. SeaWorld has made it your business by bringing this project to you. And captive orcas deserve better. They have paid an enormous price, a price too high for nearly any justification one might try to make, but certainly for human entertainment. And it's not enough to pull the plug on dangerous human handling and silly shows. It's not enough to give them a bit more room to pace. And it's not enough to say that no more wild-caught orcas will be subjected to captivity. For these amazing creatures, a captive setting, any captive setting, is insufficient to meet their physical, social, and behavioral needs regardless of where they were born. You have the opportunity today to begin the end of this sad chapter. You can vote to approve SeaWorld's request to enlarge this habitat for 11 captive blackfish. The Humane Society of the United States urges you, if you are inclined to support that project, to do so only with a requirement that these are the last of the orcas to suffer in California tanks. If you approve without this condition, you are dooming an untold number of orcas to miserable captivity, and you will only be punting to legislators in Sacramento what you are more than capable of doing today. Prohibit the breeding and transfer of whales. Your legal authority allows you to take this step, and your moral compass insists that you do. After all, this is California, and we are used to, actually, we're proud of getting on the right side of history early. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, thank you for being present and ready to go. Appreciate it. You'll have 5 minutes.
For commissioners, I'm referring to this handout. It's a color map of South Shores, which is the project site. I'm going to talk briefly about land use. As you can see on the right hand, there's a vast expanse of acreage. The city of San Diego in that acreage canceled South Shores Park, and they canceled a Ramada Inn resort project. They canceled these projects because the area is contaminated with toxic waste and has methane and hydrogen sulfide gas from end to end. Now let's go to where the circles are. Those are technically outside the landfill boundaries. You'll see the boat launch ramp. The backhoe operator hits hydrogen sulfide gas, a pocket of it, and he died in the hospital because the gas destroys your organs. You'll see, and this is SeaWorld's own studies. By the way, they did not provide those studies on the project checklist to staff. So you'll see one of their wells, seems like whenever they drill in their area, outside the official boundaries of the garbage landfill, they hit gas. Up top, I have the LE well where they hit hydrogen sulfide and methane and had to evacuate under emergency status. The middle wells show that there is attributable to an aerospace injury dump, heavy metals, a plume of trichloroethane, chromium, and 2-butadiene. Those are toxic waste from industrial processes. Just so you know, that's from World War II plants nearby that produced 25,000 bombers. The last one I'll refer to, the J well hit hydrogen sulfide at 1,800 parts per million. It can kill you. It is in fact fatal at 100 parts. So we wonder why staff does not require at minimum EIR, and for this reason, the fact that gas forms unpredictably over time, you need to deny the permit for a project that keeps people underground where the gas will see vapor intrusion.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Patrick Herman on council on behalf of C. I'd just like to follow up on a couple points that Mr. Andrews made. I run down in Mission Bay in the South Shores Park area on a regular basis. I see families down there with their kids splashing around in that water. And I'm sure that they are unaware of how contaminated that water really is. It's well known among longtime San Diegans that this was a municipal dump from at least 1947 to 1959. What's less well known is that it was an industrial dump that Mr. Andrews just mentioned. The aerospace industry was depositing barrels and barrels of heavy metals, acetone, thallium, arsenic, and other toxic chemicals, which are now buried beneath an earthen cap, which is somewhere between 12 and 15 feet thick, which covers these toxins. The proposed orca tank by SeaWorld is going to go down 50 feet. They will be churning up all of this toxic material, and it will be subject to release into Mission Bay, both from tidal flushing and from the dewatering, which will have to take place as they're pumping water out of this project as it's going forward. This will further pollute Mission Bay and further expose the residents and visitors to San Diego. The EPA did a study of this site in June of 1990, and they compared it to be as contaminated as the Stringfellow acid pits up in Riverside. This is a Class 1 industrial waste site, which really should have Superfund money going in to remediate it. So there's no way that this excavation is not going to be penetrating into the toxic contaminants that are there. By the way, the worker who died as a result of the gas leak, his name was Harrison Carter, and he was exposed on October 6, 1988, along with 7 other workers. The other 7 survived, but Mr. Carter, unfortunately, did not. And the same factors that go into creating these gas plumes are still present today. So I urge you to deny the permit. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the Sea Shepherd representatives up, and you'll have 12 minutes. That will complete the public organized presentations. We'll move into the public comments, and we'll begin with Deanna Spain.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing us. My name is David Hance. I'm the campaign coordinator for Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. And I'm here on behalf of Sea Shepherd, as well as the hundreds of thousands of supporters who back what we do on a daily basis. All of those supporters urge you strongly to deny this Blue World application by SeaWorld. If you grant this to SeaWorld, this would disregard strong public opinion that has come about against captivity, against the cruel practices associated with forcing these highly intelligent beings into tiny tanks and forcing them to do tricks on a daily basis just to get their food. Now, SeaWorld has argued that this matter lies outside the jurisdiction of the Commission. I think we've shown that that's not true. They've also argued that this is preempted by federal law, but you guys cited earlier Section 30411B, which shows that it is within your authority to address this. What we're urging you is to listen to the hundreds of thousands of people who have beseeched you to deny this. Here's a few reasons why you should deny this. Regardless of the size of the tank, captivity is cruel, inhumane, and absolutely unjustifiable. Sea Shepherd is a global leader in cetacean protection, and we have spent decades bearing witness to and working to end cetaceans in captivity, including orcas. And I don't know if you've seen the way that these animals are brought into slavery, but it is definitely something that is not nice to witness. I myself have been in some of these countries, and I've watched this. And I've watched these babies ripped from their mothers. And I've listened to the cries of the mothers as their babies are taken away from them. Imagine, if you will, Miss Bochco, if next year at your family reunion, there's 100 Bochcos standing around, and a group of armed men come in and they take your uncle and they put him in a prison pen, and they take your brother and they put him here, and they kill your father in front of you. What's the difference between that and what happens here? SeaWorld has told us these are highly intelligent beings. They're very similar to humans. They show feelings, they show empathy. So you tell me, what's the difference? You know, since the release of the movie Blackfish, SeaWorld has been reeling from profit losses, loss of attendance, and they've gone on a big campaign to greenwash. And if you look at the things that they're doing, everything that they talk about is highly contradictory. When they're talking about this Blue World project, on one hand, they're claiming, oh, the orcas are going to have more space. But in the same breath, they're admitting that they have every intention of enslaving even more orcas. So I'm sorry, someone buy me a new calculator, but by my calculations, more orcas means less space. SeaWorld tells you that their orcas engage in natural behaviors. If that's not the most absurd statement I've ever heard, find me another one. You tell me that these magnificent creatures are forced to spend their day leaping through hoops and sliding up onto platforms, holding their mouth open to get food, when this is something they could do naturally in their own environment. You tell me how that's a natural behavior. SeaWorld claims they are educational. I don't see anything educational about seeing whales jump through hoops or carry a trainer around on their back. What are we learning from that? They say they want to educate their children. Children can be educated about whales through film, through classrooms, through books. They can go out on whale watching expeditions. You know, the price of a ticket to SeaWorld is very close to the price of a ticket on a whale watching vessel. If you can go to SeaWorld in Orlando or in San Diego, both of which are right next to the ocean, you certainly can buy a ticket and go out on a whale watching vessel. SeaWorld is not and never has been an educational facility. The last speaker's already mentioned the environmental contaminants. This project is slated to be built on one of the most polluted areas of California, and SeaWorld already has the unenviable position of being one of the largest pollutants in California. If they go forward this project, what they do here could blow all the other polluters out of the water. And I mean that quite literally. We have very serious concerns about the safety of marine animals in captive facilities in general, but particularly here in Southern California, where natural disasters are just a heartbeat away. And this is something that no one has talked about yet. Consider what happened last week in Europe at the French Riviera, when torrential rains and floods washed through one of the largest marine parks in the world, certainly the largest in Europe, Marineland. Since that flood, sharks, rays, turtles have been swept away, some of them buried, some of them never found. There's still some killer whales that may be missing. The tanks of the orcas from this flood still to this day remain buried in mud. Their filtration systems are completely useless. Now we're talking about the French Riviera, but if you think that can't happen here, you need to think again. Yes, we are the land of the 4-year drought. I know we're all hopeful for El Nino, but let's say we don't have torrential rains. What happens if there's just a slight tremor from the Rose Canyon fault line that runs right through the middle of San Diego? What's going to happen to these poor animals? What about a mid-sized wave, tsunami wave from a distant tremor off the ocean? What's going to happen then? What about the rise in sea level? The list goes on as to why this is not a good idea for SeaWorld. If Marineland, Europe's largest captive marine facility, can't stave off Mother Nature, I'm certain SeaWorld cannot either. We did some research and we found out that when people are talking about these conditions, and one of the things we found out is that right now, you guys have nearly 2,000 pending coastal act violations, some of them going back almost 10 years. If you issue these conditions for SeaWorld, how do we know that this committee will be able to monitor them? If you're already backdated 10 years, I don't see how you can follow up on any further violations by SeaWorld. All we're doing is merely asking that you stand by your mission. And I went on your website last night because I wanted to make sure that I got it correct. And your mission states that you are here to protect, conserve, restore, and enhance environmental and human-based resources of the California coast and ocean for environmentally sustainable or prudent use by current and future generations. The only way to uphold your mission is to deny this permit outright. Now, I look around today and I see these signs from SeaWorld. Educate, inspire, conserve. I think we've already seen and shown that there's no such thing as education, not when it comes to this place. Inspire. I think the only thing that's being inspired is people around the world are being inspired to stop spending their money at these horrible facilities that do nothing for animals. And the biggest joke of these signs is the word conserve, conservation. The only thing they're concerned about conserving is their bottom dollar. It has nothing to do with animals. Now, all these signs, somebody had everyone stand up. You see all the signs opposing this motion. All of these people are here on their own. We didn't have to bust them in. We didn't have to give them free t-shirts. We didn't have to give them free tickets to SeaWorld. We didn't have to buy them lunch. They came here on their own because they believe in what is right and because they want you to uphold your mission. So please listen to them and not the paid people and uphold your mission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move into public comments. We'll have 2 minutes per speaker from this point on. And I want to just encourage, before we begin, we're going to start with a number of elected officials and their representatives and move into others. But, you know, even if you've signed up for a speaking card, if you feel as though your voice has been expressed, the reason we gave these organized presentations the time to go first and to give them an extended period of time is to get information to our commission. So if you don't feel you have anything to add other than your strong support, you do not need to take the time to speak. But if you do want to speak, I'm going to be calling out a number of names, and I'd encourage you to come up and be sitting in the chairs here so that we can move more quickly. So after Deanna speaks, I'm going to invite up Guy Strang, and then Councilmember Lori Zapp. Welcome, Deanna.
Thank you. I'm Deanna Spain. I'm Special Assistant for Policy for Speaker of the Assembly, Tony Atkins. She sent a letter in for the record that you should already have, but she wanted me to reinforce her beliefs for this project. Chairman Kinsey and members of the Commission, I write in strong support of the coastal development permit that would enable the replacement and expansion of the existing killer whale habitat with a marine aquarium themed exhibit and immersive killer whale habitat experience. The proposed design is consistent with the existing master plan and will expand the swimming opportunities for the killer whales due to the significant increases in the size of the pools. Replacing a set of restrooms and a bakery dating from the 1980s that is approximately 5,500 square feet in size with a new 2,900 square foot restroom facility that will use seawater rather than fresh water will save over 1 million gallons a year and reduce the bulk and scale of the building. New pathways for the public to use, lighting, and audio enhancements are welcome additions. SeaWorld has its own stormwater treatment facility and all stormwater will be treated on site. The process as proposed will not be visible outside of the SeaWorld leasehold and will be consistent with the 30-foot height limit I encourage the Commission's support of the coastal development permit that will enhance the experience for both the killer whales and the public. Warmly, Tony G. Atkins, Speaker of the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. Guy, then Councilmember Zapp, and then Andrea Cardenas, and then Dave Grubb.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kinsey and Commissioners. I'm Guy Straw, I'm the Legislative Director for Assemblymember Richard Bloom, and he apologizes he couldn't make it today. He's outside the country. I'm going to read his statement from him. It's Assemblymember Bloom introduced AB 2140 in 2014. AB 2140 sought to prohibit all captive breeding orcas and to limit SeaWorld's display to 11 whales currently in their that they have. Assemblymember Bloom elected to study the issue of advancing AB 2140. The more we learn, the more committed we are to phasing out the display of captive orcas. He fully intends to pursue this objective. As such, it would be extremely unfortunate and counterproductive if the Coastal Commission were to grant an entitlement to SeaWorld to expand their captive breeding program. Fortunately, your broad jurisdiction under the Coastal Act gives you the authority to advance protective measures for these magnificent marine mammals and play an important role in phasing out captivity practices. Your staff report does an excellent job of establishing that you are not legally preempted by any state or federal law from regulating these activities. The staff report also correctly identifies 30230 as the applicable Coastal Act section, giving you specific authority over SeaWorld's marine mammal breeding and display practices. But your staff's recommendation does not go far enough. Prohibiting the display of the whales captured offshore California, the display of utilization of wild-caught whales or gametes with wild individuals captured after February 12, 2014 is largely symbolic. It will do little to protect the wild whales and nothing to limit the continued production of captive orcas who live out their lives in grossly inadequate circumstances. Again, we come to this thing where it's 11 whales. If the tank gets bigger, it's better for those 11 whales, but if they're adding more whales, it doesn't get better for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zapp, and then Andrea, then Dave, and then James Duff.
Thank you. Hello, Commissioners. I am Lori Zaff, and I am a San Diego City Council member. I represent District 2, which includes Mission Bay, where SeaWorld is located. SeaWorld has always been a great partner to the City of San Diego and a part of the fabric of our community for the past 50 years. The park provides thousands of jobs and is one of the largest employers of youth. For so many high school and college students, SeaWorld is their first employer, their very first paycheck. It has a huge economic impact on the City of San Diego, in fact, the entire region. SeaWorld provides tens of millions of dollars in sales tax, payroll tax, property tax, TOT, as well as lease payments. SeaWorld is also a leader in environmental conservation. They voluntarily eliminated plastic bags and polystyrene products at their own expense because it was better for the environment as well as the marine animals. Animal care is clearly a top priority for SeaWorld, and after visiting SeaWorld myself and taking a look and visiting with the trainers, the animal care experts, the vets, and their research center, I saw firsthand just how much the SeaWorld employees really love their jobs, and released back to the ocean tens of thousands of animals, well over 900 just in the past year alone. They surely would have perished. These animals would have perished were it not for SeaWorld. They also are very generous to the community. They give back through nonprofits and educational outreach.
That's your time, so if you just would wrap up your comments.
Absolutely. I encourage you to please support the Blue World Project. I timed this. I don't know what happened. I came in at 1:59. So thank you. It will improve not only their quality of life, but enhance education and research opportunities. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrea, then Dave, then James Duff.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm going to keep my remarks short. I'm here on behalf of San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulkner to offer our support for SeaWorld San Diego's new Blue World project. I also want to echo the same sentiments as Councilmember Saff on the partnership that we've always had with SeaWorld San Diego. We recognize that this project will expand educational opportunities at SeaWorld San Diego by promoting deeper knowledge of whales and their ocean environment. Additionally, we believe that this project will help further conservation and research efforts and benefit SeaWorld's goal to protect marine life in the wild. Our office appreciates your consideration and respectfully urges you to approve this application. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Please come forward. That's great. Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair Kinsey and Commissioners. My name is David Grubb. I'm representing Sierra Club California and the many other organizations that signed on to the group letter, which I'm sure you have all seen. Since I'm sure you've seen the letter, I'm not going to repeat all of the points that are made in it and try to just boil this down to the essential element. If you look back at human history, there are many, many examples of casual and thoughtless cruelty to animals. I'm thinking about dog fights, cockfights, bullfighting, bear baiting. All of those gruesome spectacles speak to a dark side of human nature that is part of our being that allows us to laugh at a cripple trying to walk or applaud as an animal is tormented for our amusement. But we can do better than that. We are better than that. Our social norms have evolved, our ethics have evolved, and there's a growing understanding that the SeaWorld's animals, and particularly the orcas, are suffering. So essentially, what I'm here to ask is, it's time to stop torturing animals for people's amusement and to make money. So I would ask you as commissioners to do everything in your power to end this practice of torturing animals for fun and profit. Thank you.
Thank you. James Duff, followed by Pam Heathering, Lex O'Brien, and Lindsay Laris, and then CC Cumler.
Good afternoon. My name is James Duff. Thank you for listening. I'm here because it's been brought to my attention that nobody really has talked about the earthquake issue, and they're building a disaster here between two earthquake zones. David Hance mentioned one of them. He mentioned the Rose Canyon Fault. There's another fault called the Point Loma Fault. And this information is all factual and is found in the City of San Diego's Seismic Safety Study, published in 2008. This map is from Grid 20. It shows nothing but yellow, high potential liquefaction zone is probably one of the worst seismic dangers you can have in the entire state of California. San Diego has done this study. The science is there. I'm not making it up. It's factual. And it's liquefaction, and it says high potential of hazard. It's been completely ignored. I haven't seen anybody else talk about it except David Hance. And you would be doing yourselves a favor to look into this subject before you made any decision. If there's an earthquake in a 40-foot hole, you can imagine what would happen with the people trying to get out of that hole, let alone the animals. They'd be stuck. There's no disaster plan to move 5 million gallons somewhere else. So I want to leave you with that thought and introduce you to Joe. He's from Bell, California.
Hi, it's an honor to be in front of you guys because I've always dreamt of this day. Excuse me for my poor speech. I just got my braces. I'm sorry. But it seems like all you guys are kind of like bored out of your mind because everybody's saying something and somebody's saying something else. But I've actually had proof, and as many people have thought that we're trying to tell you to do your job. We're not. What I like to do is I like to give the people an opportunity to decide for themselves. I've done an experiment, and I've told kids in my class about SeaWorld. I've told them what they do to these animals. And even one of my friends, I told them 10 things about SeaWorld. And after those 10 things, she looked at me like, I told my friend, this is exactly what they do. And my friend told me she would never go again. And I've been doing this for years and years.
Thank you, Joe. We got a whole room of folks who want to speak, but I want to thank you for taking the time to speak. Today. Very well done.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Pam, and then Lex, and then Lindsay, and then Cece.
Thank you, Chair Kinsey and Commissioners. My name is Pam Hetherington, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Environmental Center of San Diego. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the moral dimension of why we are here today. When we talk about animals in captivity, we generally don't grant them a moral sense. But it's not a